Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another instalment of the United District podcast. A little bit of a break. I thought we'd give you a little bit of respite, my dulcet tones for a couple of weeks. And we're back, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by two of I'd say the biggest, most well-respected United accounts on Twitter. Ali, United Ali, I think everyone knows who he is. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, hello. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks, mate. And also the United Link, or I should say Akash, aka the United Link, who I'm sure everyone knows as well. Akash, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No worries. Good to have you both on. Obviously, very unprecedented times at the minute. How have you both been coping with the lockdown in your respective locations? Ollie,
For me specifically, I remember the date. I haven't seen my friends since March 16. It was funny because at the time, I had plans with my friends of going doing fun things over the next couple months, and it's just funny to see that none of them have come into fruition. But otherwise, I'm good. It's Ramadan right now, so fasting. It's been quite easy. For the simple fact I have to be staying home and just resting and doing work. So thankfully I'm not. I've been doing fine. I'm just I'm not really missing out on much because everyone else is going through it here. So just thankful that everyone's healthy and that I can still live somewhat a good life.
yeah, good. Akash, yourself?
Yeah, I agree with Ali when he says that because I'm just happy that everyone is safe and healthy. That's what matters at the moment. We need to follow the guidelines of the lockdown, and we just need to get through this phase. And once I think we find a cure for this. Once there is when we find solutions for this, we can finally get back to normal. But till then, we need to just follow the guidelines and stay at home and let the government do their thing.
Yeah,
Agree.
yeah,
I agree.
sounds about right to me. We'll move on to a topic, obviously something that's at the forefront of every football fan's mind at the moment, just away from United for the moment. It's the return of football. Obviously, we've got the Bundesliga coming back tomorrow, leagues here and there being called null and void. I think the Eredivisie and the Liga 1 obviously have all come to an end. Obviously, big question marks still surround the return of the Premier League. It seems as if they're trying to bring it back. They're doing everything in their power they can to bring it back. How do you both think that the Premier League should move forward? And if it turns out that they can't do that, how should the league be decided? Ali, I'll let you go first.
Sure. I mean, for me, to be quite honest, I don't really care whether the league moves forward or not. I think I'd rather put the safety of the players and the public first. So I wouldn't be comfortable restarting the league until sort of there's 100% guarantee that everyone is clear and safe. Because I just think there are much bigger things, bigger than football. But to answer your question, as to what they can do, to sort of decide next season's Champions League or relegation or whatever. I think, obviously, Liverpool didn't mathematically win it, but let's be real, they were going to win the league. I don't care if they get crowned champions. I think they probably should be. But I think second and third were quite ahead in City and Leicester. I think for fourth place, if you want to make sort of like a playoff kind of format where you have 4, 5, 6, and 7 play like sort of like in the championship when they have like the playoff rounds to make it into the Premier League. If they did something similar with that and just did it at a neutral ground and whoever won between the 4 teams sort of made it into the Champions League, that wouldn't be bad. My concern is how can you sort of do that with some of the relegation sides. And of course, you have to take into account some sides were at a disadvantage due to the strength of schedule. So some teams obviously had like much easier schedules for the remainder of the season compared to others. You can even look at ourselves. I think we got rid of we finished outside of Spurs. which was the last one, I believe. I think we played all the top 6 sides remaining, if I'm correct.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Right, except Leicester, and that would have been on the closing sort of last week of the season. So Chelsea still had, I believe, City, Liverpool. I don't remember. It's been too long, but I think City and Liverpool they still had on their schedule.
Arsenal had a massive amount of big sides left. I know that they had.
Arsenal as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to find a solution. The only other solution I can think of is if you just took the way the table looked halfway through the season. So exactly when each team played each other once. I think which was week 19. That I don't think it's a good idea, but it's another sort of one of the more fair, I guess, ways to sort of decide like league. I don't think we should go back to playing the Premier League, to be honest. And I'm not a huge fan of the whole Bundesliga thing, but I don't have the data in front of me and the information on how they've been impacted, so I can't really speak. But it seems as though the UK have been hit quite badly in comparison to Germany. What do you think, Akash?
Yeah.
When we speak about the Premier League returning and when we make comparisons with the Bundesliga, it's actually I don't think the comparison is fair because I think Germany has done a very good job in containing the amount of coronavirus cases that they have, and they've it's actually an extremely systematic process in Germany and how they're that's why everyone is actually looking forward to football resuming in Germany because they will try implementing a similar model of football that in their own home countries. So I think when the Premier League is focusing on Project Restart, it's actually been pretty embarrassing, to be honest, with how everyone in this situation has dealt with this because I feel the Premier League needs to be extremely open in terms of its communication, which I feel they fail to do. The fans are always confused as to what the status of the league is. The clubs are extremely confused as to what the status of the league is. Majority of the teams are not open to the concept of neutral grounds. So you can see this happening because I think a lot of teams have gone into the meetings and you can see that they've always come out of the meetings without any solution or without any resolution. So I think project this restart is actually struggling, and the Premier League actually needs to sit down and try to get the best out of these teams and try to meet with the demands of not just the top sides but also with the relegation sides, because to be very honest, I don't think the relegation sides signed up for this. They're in an extremely difficult situation, and if you get relegated, especially in this financial scenario, it's going to be an absolute disaster for these clubs. So when we always speak about the Premier League returning, I think a lot of it is because there's a lot of money at stake. There's around 800 million at stake, and that amounts to roughly 40 million pounds if each club wants to, if the clubs want the league to be voided, then that's the amount they have to pay. But broadcasters, you can just imagine the kind of financial crunch that these clubs are in, and on top of that, broadcasters are asking for, like Simon Stone of the BBC said, that they're asking for a fee around 323 million with regards to the league resuming behind closed doors but without fans. So they're losing out on commercial revenue. So there's a lot at stake at the moment. Obviously, the fans will not likely watch the game in stadiums live for a very, very long time. But with regards to watching the game on television, I think broadcasters are going to create issues. So it's going to be, and even I agree with Ali when he says that the players' health comes as a priority, because a lot of them have refrained from giving their commitments in order to fulfill their contracts, because and there's also for the force majeure clause that is there in every player's contract, so they can exercise that and the clubs can exercise that. A lot of clubs are doing that in order to avoid liability on themselves. So there's a lot going on right now in football. It's going to get really messy in terms of what's going to happen in the next few weeks. But what we can hope for is hopefully everything goes well in the Bundesliga, and if that happens, there is hope. And I think the UK government wants football to return. So let's hope for the best.
So I was going to ask a question. The first was I agree completely, and it's going to be interesting because I feel like whatever decision they make, there's going to be a couple teams, regardless, that are going to be unhappy, right? No, not everyone's going to be happy with the
Mm.
decision. And then the second, the other question I had for you, Akash, is and Henry as well. What do you think they'll do with sides who, should be getting promoted this season? For example, like Leeds. I don't know who else is at the top of the championship table, but
Mm.
what do you do about that?
Well, I'm not sure, to be honest, because I've just seen literally breaking news just before we started this. League Two, which is obviously two leagues below the Championship,
Hmm.
they're going off a points per game basis, and they're looking to relegate the clubs who are in the relegation zone on points per game and promote the sides that are on that were in the playoff place on points per game, and then they're going to try and play the playoffs as well to try and get the 4 up, 4 down, or it's
Interesting.
4 up, 2 down rather system continuing. And I think that's got to be a knock-on effect from League Two all the way to the Premier League, and there's got to be a steady supply of a correct amount of teams going down and the
Yeah.
correct amount of teams coming up. So if you null and void the Premier League and they say they can't relegate sides, which obviously there's going to be anger with that if they try and relegate sides, and we've seen it in the Ligue 1 already, I believe, where a lot of dispute over sides really should they be getting relegated if the season has been completed.
Yeah.
And if they don't relegate sides from the Premier League, then how can you bring up sides from the Championship, and the numbers get messy everywhere. So I think they've got to be consistent throughout, either from League Two all the way to the Premier League. You relegate absolutely no one across all those leagues, or and promote no one, or you continue as if the season had finished now. I think that's the only way they can do it. They've got to be consistent in their approach
I'm
to that.
reading. I'm reading
I
some
think
and
what
stuff.
happened in France. I think what happened in France was extremely sad to see because the season wasn't completed yet, and then they still, decided on relegation and
Yeah.
who would be the winner. So I think that results in a lot of legal battle, and that's where things decide to get ugly. So I think commercialization of sport has obviously, impacted the whole industry because had it not been so commercialized, we would have seen easy solutions, but there's so much money at stake, and I can see FIFA and UEFA and all their legal teams that are involved. It's going to be really messy for a really long time.
Mm.
I cannot see easy solutions anywhere because had it been like that, it would have been resolved a long time back. But there's so much discussion and there's so much agitation with regards to the bottom teams because just because they're showing concern, it's often said that just because they're relegation sides, they'll obviously moot for the fact that they don't want to continue and resume play. But that shouldn't certainly be the case. Players have families, players have a lot to deal with in their own personal lives, and to force them in such scenario, it's like literally asking them to dance on a minefield. It's
Mm.
it's like it's extremely difficult at the moment. So I think it's important for the players to come, and I think what would be fair is the captains of every team to come about and to moot for what the teammates say, and to put a clear stance with regard to what the club wants. Because I think I agree with Gary Neville. What he said was that the Premier League it has not been absolutely clear with its communication. I think Brighton is one of the only clubs which has carried out constant communication with its fans. So I think all clubs need to do that, with regards to communication with their fans, because that's how it will not only will it ease in the responsibilities of the Premier League, but also it will ease in the responsibility of the fans. Because if Liverpool are declared champions, will it's obvious the fans will come on the streets and celebrate. Is that safe to do so in this environment? Absolutely not. So it's
Mm.
important for the clubs to communicate with the fans, and it's important that the clubs take strict action. I've not seen that from any of the clubs so far. I think with
Yeah.
regards to providing relief, I think majority of the clubs have done well, Manchester United included. But I think we have failed on the communication bit.
No, I
Yeah.
think you make a really good point there about Liverpool. Actually, the sort of knock-on effect that just handing them the title could have. I think you make a really good point. I completely agree. I think the streets of Merseyside would probably be lined with red shirts. I hadn't thought about that. So that's an interesting point. We'll move on to specifically United, and how the lockdowns affected us. Obviously, we came into lockdown at a sort of bittersweet time in that we were on a good run of form. So it's a shame to stop that momentum. But obviously, it gives the manager, it gives Solskjaer a lot of security, because no clubs are going to look at sacking managers now. Of course not. It wouldn't be morally, ethically correct. So that's not going to happen now. And at the same time, it just gives United fans a bit of ease of mind, really, because I think if we'd gone into this lockdown in horrible form, then I think we'd all be sat here reeling, to be honest, about the whole thing, and not even in an even worse mood, if that's possible, in the lockdown. There's a question from him here, which touches on Solskjaer. He says, if Ole was to leave, and as I've just said, I don't think he will anytime soon, who's the better choice, Allegri or Poch? Ali, I know your answer, so we'll go to Akash first. Akash, Allegri or Poch?
I don't think we should have sacked Mourinho if we were to bring in Allegri, because I consider them to be extremely similar in their traits of managing teams. So they're extremely defensive-minded managers when it comes to setting up a team. When Mourinho used to be at any other club, he always used to mention that a team rebuild always starts from the defense. So I think that's one of the major reasons why he left United, was because United failed to get Harry Maguire when he wanted Harry Maguire to join Manchester United. But there's part blame everywhere. You know how Mourinho is. He's like a ticking bomb if you don't give him the things that he wants. And I think that's how things panned out. And I think the transfer approach has changed considerably after Mourinho's sacking. I think United have become a little more responsible with how they act in the market, especially with regards to who they sign. I think Daniel James has done considerably well as compared to the role that he was given, which was I think for the kind of money that we spent on him, we definitely got a better return. No one expected him to start games week in, week out, but that's how he's done it. So you can see that the United setup has changed considerably. There are reports that Ed Woodward's involvement in transfers has reduced. I don't completely agree with those reports, but I do know for a fact that there is a transfer committee in place, and Marcel Bout is actually one of the people who's heading those committees, and confirming targets. And Ole has obviously a very big say in who comes in, who goes out. So I think Ole has done as you can say that it's been a on and off season for us. We can say that he has done considerably well against the top sides, but he struggled against the bottom sides. So I think he needs one more season in. But if you were to actually consider his form before Bruno Fernandes came in, I would say that, Poch would be the man. I think we were looking at him, but as things stand, I think Ole has managed to turn the negative tide, and he has managed to change the atmosphere of the clubs. Obviously, there are negatives and positives. I'm not saying that he's been it's been a complete miracle for us. He is to blame for a lot of things. But we can give him another season to probably work with the squad with Pogba and Rashford fully fit, and Bruno Fernandes coming in, and possibly Sancho as well. So let's see how things pan out. But if he were to see that Ole was to be sacked, then probably Pochettino for me.
1 point to Poch. Go on, Ali. Double it.
Make it 2 points for Poch. I don't really know what much to say about that hasn't already been said, or if you know me, like what my views are on Poch. But I guess to sort of discuss Akash's points further about the negatives and positives of Ole, I think from a positive perspective, I guess the players that we have bought in, whether you agree or not with the fee that we paid for the players, they have had a positive impact on the side for the most part. I know some, including myself, aren't massive fans of Maguire, but for those who do see him in a positive light, that's great, because we have improved slightly defensively, but not as much as I think is being publicized, in my opinion.
But don't you guys agree that Lindelof is largely to blame for most of the errors in our defense?
It's hard to blame it only on him, because there are times
and Luke Shaw as well, in my opinion.
I mean, Aaron has made some mistakes as well at right back. I think they've all made mistakes. No one's been perfect. I think of the four, I trust Wan-Bissaka the most.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
to
100% for
I
me.
think he's just made one error against Watford this season, if I'm not
yeah,
wrong. Just one.
yeah, yeah, and Crystal Palace, I think when they scored the winner, I think he wasn't in the right position. I think for the second goal.
I was going
But
to say
anyway,
Anfield as well. Anfield, he was getting he was a bit tired, wasn't he? And at Anfield, I remember against Bobby Firmino, I think, but it didn't lead to a
yeah,
goal, I think. But
yeah. So I guess from my end, like he's done it. Identifying players has been quite good. Um, I think some games I've been quite disappointed with how we've played. Like Akash said, it's been up and down. Obviously, we ended sort of on a high, and I'm always very cautious with praising managers now, or especially Oli, because of before he got the full time job, he obviously went on a really good run, and then when he got appointed full time, it went downhill from there. So I still need to see a little bit more. I think the sample size is too small to get too excited. We have to stay, realistic and remember that we're not in the top four. We're still in the Europa League, which is good, but we still haven't shown much physically to prove that we're getting there. But the sample size that just before the pandemic hit and football stopped was quite good, and the football was played largely was quite good. So we just got to see more of it.
just moving back on to the defence, obviously you sort of Akash hinted at it, Lindelof sort of weakness, and I definitely obviously sell him before Maguire if it came to it out of the two centre halves. Who do you guys think would be a solid replacement for Lindelof? Obviously, Maguire a bit more of a traditional centre half, although his ball playing ability when it comes to driving forward into good positions is quite good. I'd say that the man alongside him would need to be a very comfortable with his feet, like Lindelof is, but also more solid defensively. That's what I'd argue. I'm not sure who would fit that bill
Yeah.
though. Do you two have any ideas who'd fit well alongside Harry Maguire?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think Bai is actually quite good, but the problem with Bai is obviously staying fit.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Bai's qualities and skill set sort of compensates for Maguire's inefficiencies in some areas. Um, my I'm not a scout, and I don't want to throw out names when I haven't really watched them as much. I know people have talked about Upamecano from Leipzig, obviously Koulibaly from Napoli. I haven't watched them this season that much, so I don't want to draw too much conclusions. But ideally, I think what would be nice to have alongside Maguire is someone with quite a bit of pace and and a decent good at positioning, obviously good aerially, and who can sort of be another ball playing center back alongside Maguire. I just threw out a bunch of sort of nice skills it would be to have against alongside Maguire, but ideally I think pace would be one of the more important attributes that they must have.
Akash?
When we speak about Koulibaly, and the funniest thing is that he's probably reaching the peak time of his career, but he's had probably one of the worst seasons that he's had in his career last season at Napoli, and that's one of the major reasons why I think Napoli regret not selling him last season, is because now his value seems to have dropped. And they're looking for buyers for him. So obviously you'll see links to Liverpool, you'll see links to Manchester United, Manchester City. They want to get rid of the player. So do United want to spend that kind of money on a centre back at the moment, after spending just an extremely high amount on Harry Maguire? I
Yeah.
don't think so. I think United might spend that kind of money on Upamecano, who has I think he's valued at around anywhere between 40 to 50 million in this present scenario. So I think United can go for him. He's a good option to have. I think he's had a brilliant season at Leipzig, and I think United should probably go for him, because I think all the reliable sources have said that United are looking at a centre back. So it's extremely important that we toughen our defense and stop leaking goals, because United have the tendency to leak a lot of goals, silly goals. So it's important that we help form a good partnership with Harry Maguire, and after that, if you look at Liverpool and why they're doing so well this season, in my opinion, is because they're so solid defensively that they play a higher line. So when they do play a higher line, it's easier for their attacking system to be more efficient and to score more goals. So if and with United, that's not the case, because if you play a high line, you'll probably see Shaw getting caught out, or you'll probably see Lindelof making an error in the air. And I'm not saying Harry Maguire is perfect; he's made his fair share of mistakes, but you'll see more of mistakes from the likes of Shaw or Lindelof, and not Maguire and Van Bissaka. So I think if we are concentrating on getting a defensive player, I think it's probably going to be Upamecano.
Yeah. Okay. As you've just sort of touched on, leaking goals. A man who has been at the hands of a couple of those leakages, David De Gea, the goalkeeper
He's had a tough one, mate.
What was that? Sorry.
He's had a tough season.
He has, and it's caused a lot of questions, and it's one question that's been bound about quite a lot during lockdown, because obviously you get a lot of time, I think, now to discuss things. It's like the summer break, really, isn't it? You start doubting certain players and talking about their futures, and a lot of people have suggested that Dean Henderson, who's had a magnificent season at Sheffield United, could or should be promoted to number one next season with De Gea, maybe sold on or what have you. Where do you both stand on who should be our number one keeper next season?
Akash, you want to go first?
Yeah, with regards to De Gea, I just think he signed a new contract, and I think the public outcry is obviously he's made mistakes. He's not the same guy that he was. We all saw that after the World Cup in Russia. I was shocked when I saw those kind of mistakes from De Gea, because he's generally so good at saving shots, and he's extremely great with his legs. So I think with regards to him not doing well, obviously it's raised a lot of eyebrows, because the kind of wages that he's on, can passion for the club compensate to that degree for the mistakes that he's made. I think he saved United a lot, but I think he should be given just one more season to save his face, to save his grace at United. And if that's not the case, then probably United are obviously going to get in Henderson. I think one more season at loan at Sheffield should probably help him with that regard. I think if De Gea can probably play well this season, I think a lot will change. And I think there's also been a lot of change with regards to the coaching staff, with regards to the goalkeeping staff that's coming. I think we've got in a coach from Burnley with David De Gea. So will that make a lot of changes? I don't think so, but let's hope for the best. I think he should be given another season for him to save himself at United.
Ollie?
I think De Gea. I love De Gea, so it's super super hard for me to try to justify giving his job away to Dean Henderson. I think also as well, if we were looking to sell De Gea, it'll be quite difficult for us because A, he just signed a new contract. B, I don't know how many clubs out there need a new goalkeeper, especially one who's come off the back of a rather poor 18 months for his standard. And C, even if they were to buy him right for a fee, no one will know if he can get back to that form that he had, 18 months ago or 2 years ago. I think as well it's quite unfair. Obviously, he's made mistakes, but I think people are also forgetting all the good saves he's had this season. I think with goalkeepers, we only tend to look at, all right, how many mistakes have they done, but without realizing really how many times have they really saved us? And so there have been times this season where he's come up big and saved us on a couple of occasions, and I think that's important to note. I think it's fair to say, like Akash said, okay, let's try one more season. I think Dean is still young enough to have a loan for one more year at Sheffield, and then if things don't work out with De Gea, we can look to sort of sell next summer. But this also gives us a bigger glimpse for how Dean Henderson will perform in a Premier League side, because he's done it so far in one season. He's been really good, but let's see, can he do it in two? Can we do it for 2 seasons? So it's a bigger sample size for Dean to grow, and it also gives an opportunity for De Gea to sort of redeem himself. So I think it's a win-win all around. I don't think it's a bad problem to have. I think it's
Yeah.
good that we are comfortable and having this discussion, and it just shows the quality of goalkeepers that we might have in our hands. So I don't think it's a bad problem to have.
No, I completely agree, and I think to replace De Gea now after everything he's done for sort of 1.5 bad seasons, really, or maybe 2, debatable, really. I think it'd be a bit fickle to replace him with, as you say, someone who's only proved himself with one good season in the Premier League. So yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. I think one more season and then reevaluate things.
Yeah.
Got a question from Twitter here from Mazala8 who asks, where do you think James will consolidate himself in the squad? So do you guys think he'll end up being a genuine regular starter? I'm not sure about that, or a squad player.
Yeah.
Ali, you can go first this one.
I think the whole genuine starter thing, right? That's up to the player, right? If he can improve and get to a level where he can be a starter, then fair play to him. I'm not one to sort of like suggest, oh, he's only going to be a squad player, or he's only going to do this. Like it's really up to the player and how hard they can get themselves up to the level that's needed to be a starter. But I guess for now, I think he's a very good squad player. I think uh, his some fans I think have too high of expectations for him. I understand that we're United and whatnot, but I think he's done quite well. Like Akash said, he's been very good in some games. I would be very comfortable sort of starting him against sides where we sort of need to stretch the pitch, and maybe not so much against sides that it's against a low block and we need a bit more creativity and flair. Um, but I think he's a specialist player. He can be very effective against specific sides, and I think he's done quite well. And he could maybe down the line be looked at as a regular starter. But for now, for me, I think he's more of a good squad player, a good role player to have, and a good player to play against specific sides.
Akash?
Yeah, when we speak about James, I think one of my biggest problems with him is because I think he has a lot of qualities to excel as a player. But I think where he struggles is his decision making as to when to make the right pass. I think he always tends to have a shot at goal, and I'm not really, I'm not really sure about his finishing ability. So I think often, even after Bruno came in, I think there was a game where he should have passed and he didn't. And that's where I feel that he needs to develop his game. He still he Not every player has a great game sense, and I think that's where he can develop. Because from what I've seen, he has great pace. I think he has that spark in him to succeed at United, but he needs to push himself to improve. And I think we need to see that over time. We need to give him more time to settle in at the club. I think he's had a good season. He's justified his fee, and I think he can become a great player at United. And he needs to just work hard and try to get the basic things right. And once he does that, I think he'll get a lot more credit than he deserves.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think he was almost a victim of his own success, really, James. Started, obviously, incredibly well and surprised people. And the finishing, actually, that you've mentioned, which I completely agree, has actually been poor for the most part of the season. But he really did start with a bang. That curl to the far post, which he scored a few times, actually, wasn't it? Against, Palace? Southampton away, wasn't
Southampton,
it?
yeah.
Looked fantastic, and you thought we really got a good player on our hands here. And then I think that raised the bar for him a little bit because he should. I think James is the type of player who's a fantastic impact sub, and as Ali sort of said, good against maybe perhaps the bigger sides, isn't it? A bit of an impact player to stretch sides a little bit, and obviously not as effective against a deep block, but. Yeah. I think people did raise their standards for him, and I think it's got a little bit toxic actually towards him in the end because he obviously his end product wasn't that great, and he was playing week in week out and not producing what we saw from him at the beginning of the season. So I think he's a victim of his own success in that right. Got another question from Twitter. United Centro asks, should we offer Angel Gomez a better contract or just let him go? Akash, I'll let you go. What do you think about Angel Gomez? Tough one.
With regards to Gomes, I think the club offered him a new deal, but I don't think he's happy with the terms that are being given to him. I think United, from what I've read from several reports, what indicate is that United are going for players of a similar age, and that is apparently put Angel Gomez off, and he's upset that United are doing that. I think if he really wants to stay at United, it should be made clear to him that nothing will be given for granted. He needs to earn his spot in the club, and he needs to earn his spot in the team. And we all know how good he is. That's why probably most of the teams in Europe are trying to sign him. But sometimes, it's important for the player to put his head down and to probably sign the contract, because now is probably not the right time to make a move, especially with this virus going on. I think he needs to probably stay at United, sign a long-term deal, and agree with the terms that are being given by the club, and probably turn up for the club. Because whenever he's been given an opportunity, we've always seen that spark in him, but it's not enough for he doesn't create that instant impact. We all know that he has a skill, but does he turn up often for United? I think most it's not happened, and that's where a lot of players have disappointed. Like when you have seen Tahith Chong, for example, we always see that potential in him, and he's putting his head down. He signed that new contract, and he's now here to stay. So I think Gomez should do exactly that. And if he's not happy with the club's approach towards young players, then probably a move away would be best for him. If he's not satisfied on that regard.
Yeah, I think that suits the club's attitude, really, doesn't it? At the minute, the sort of, if you don't want to be here, then we don't want you. Just with transfers and with contracts, I think that's about right. Ollie?
I think ultimately, if the player is not happy with the situation and he's not happy with the terms that he was received, or he feels as though he's being undervalued, or he's not, been offered enough game time, then I think he should leave, because he believes in himself that he can have an impact in the squad, and United aren't offering him that sort of safety. I think for if he leaves, I wouldn't be too upset or too fussed, to be honest. I think he's a neat player and whatnot, but I don't know how he'll turn out with sort of his physical deficiency that he has, and the height and whatnot. So it still remains to be seen. I think it says a lot that he hasn't even been given game time, despite most United fans abusing Pereira and Lingard throughout the season. So he hasn't even had a look in from Ollie and the staff, and those coaches are around him, more than anyone. And if they don't feel as though he's ready, or if they don't feel as though he could have an impact on us on the side, then maybe they might know more than we think. So it might be a case where he thinks he's ready, and then the other side of the club doesn't think he's ready, and then he just wants maybe a loan or more game time that we won't offer. So maybe for his sake, he can go and prove it elsewhere, and then make us look like mugs, in a year or two with how he does. So it depends. I think ultimately, judging just based on what I've read on social media, it looks like he's going to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got another question here about a player that's been mentioned quite a lot, actually, related to United. Some very obscure, I think, Dutch source, if I'm correct, saying that we'd apparently agreed a deal. I think confused a lot of people, really. Moussa Dembele. The question is simple. Should United sign Moussa Dembele? Ali, if you want to go first.
For me, I don't want to. I haven't seen too much of Moussa Dembele on Lyon, because I don't really watch too much French, and I haven't seen him much in the Champions League. But what I can say, just from the very short 8 to 10 minute comps on YouTube, it seems that he's quite good aerially. He's got a bit more physical than maybe Martial, a bit different than Martial in the sense that he's a natural number 9. He's quite young still, which sort of fits the whole bill that United's trying to, move towards and sort of stay away from the whole sort of like older kind of 30, 31-year-old player. He might just be sort of coming in to fit Ighalo's role and sort of potentially be fight for the number 9 spot with Martial. So I think, the more competition, the better. The more these players will care more. The more these players will want to sort of prove themselves in practice and whatnot or training, to sort of, have their name on the team sheet come match day. So I think, the more competition, the better overall. So I'm completely in with the whole Moussa Dembele signing, and then we can sort of reevaluate how he's done if he were to come here.
Akash?
I think with United wanting a striker, because I think the Igalo deal is probably not happening anymore, because apparently the Chinese side want a fee close to 20 million for him. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think United will pay that kind of money for Igalo. So that's probably him off to China again, or probably to Newcastle, who are also interested in him as per reports. So if United are going to go for a striker, it's probably going to be Moussa Dembele. Yeah, because I think United have also contacted Timo Werner's agent as per reports in Germany. So it's an interesting time for us to focus in that area, because if Igalo is not coming, who will we actually probably get in? So if we compare Timo Werner's clause, which is supposed to be somewhere in the region of 50 million, and then there is Moussa Dembele, whose price can be anywhere between 50 to 70 million. So it's a tough ask for United, because Timo Werner is probably going to Liverpool. He's obviously Liverpool are extremely interested in him, but will they activate that clause, and will they spend that kind of money this summer? There are a lot of questions with regards to that, and I think Werner has also come out and said that he would be interested in playing in a side uh, where they might be an established side, but he would also be happy to play in a side where in a side like United, who are just coming up again. So if we base on pure ability, I would rather go for Werner than Dembele. But I would also be extremely happy with Dembele, because I think in the few games that I've watched him, I've not watched much of him either, but in the few games that I have, I think he's got really good off the ball movement. I think he's extremely good in the air. I agree with Ali on that. But my only issue with him is his finishing and his return on the amount of goals that he scores. Because with United, when it's often the case that whenever we sign a player, the focus is always on the transfer fee, and there's an extra added pressure when you actually play for United.
Yeah.
So will he be able to return that in terms of his goal scoring ability? So I think he did well in Scotland before, but I think if United are going for Dembele, then I think he's a genuine target, because I've read a lot of reports on him and whether he can come. I think he is a genuine target for United, but he might not be the only option. I think even Cavani can be looked at, because I think his deal is expiring soon, and I think for one more season, if we can just get in Cavani, and after that probably go for another striker like probably Haaland, and compare that situation, I think United can do that as well. So all in all, there are a lot of options right now. So probably Musa Dembele could happen. It's not 100%, but I think he's a definite target.
Yeah.
I think the thing with Moussa Dembele is he perhaps falls into the sort of a bit of a quality void in between, where he's sort of in between stages. No one really knows. Obviously, in the Ligue 1, and as you say, not the best goal return. It's hard to actually gauge. Obviously, I don't. So I'll confess, I don't watch him that much at all, and you two have just said the same, really. But I think it's hard to say whether how much better really is he than Anthony Martial, for example. I'm not sure. Moussa Dembele probably built more as a proper number 9, perhaps. Martial maybe not as much. So it would be good to have two different profiles in that sense. But I think that Cavani plan that you've just outlined, Akash, is actually closer to what I'd prefer. Another short-term option, Cavani probably, better than Ighalo, a better backup than Ighalo, and then obviously next season go and grab someone who's top quality to play at 9. I think that's probably the better plan. Obviously, talk of Harry Kane, don't think that's ever going to happen with Daniel Levy. But yeah, I think Cavani and then Haaland. I think Haaland's inevitable at some point, to be honest. I think that's partly because while United are maybe a little bit tentative to sign a striker, I think they're waiting for that Haaland opportunity to arise once more. And obviously, it's a shame that we just couldn't get it done in January. But obviously, Mino Raiola and Haaland himself didn't really like the prospect, unfortunately. So yeah, we'll have to see how that pans out because, as you say, Igalo as well, another interesting one. Got one last question from Twitter. It's a good one. Jerry2K. He asks, which players currently at United are good enough to win the league? So which of the current squad would you say are capable of playing in a title winning side? A tough one, I'm aware. Akash.
It's when we talk about title winning players, I think Pogba is probably one name which comes and into my mind because I often see a lot of comparisons between De Bruyne and Pogba on Twitter, and I always say that both these players are extremely talented and both these players are deserving to play in every side in the world. So I think Pogba is probably the first name that comes to mind. I think majority of the players that are at United, they're just about getting there, and I think not many of them have actually won the league. Also, apart from De Gea, I think so. And when you see players like Maguire coming in, obviously they'll help contend for the title. But I think Pogba at the moment is possibly the only one. I think it would be unfair to say Bruno Fernandes because he's had a few games, but I'm absolutely loving the impact that he's having at United. It's probably the most exciting transfer that I covered on my account. I think I'm extremely happy that he joined United, and I think at the moment he would be the closest one who I would name after Pogba. But I think only Pogba comes to mind for a title contending side.
So
That's crazy. I would
one
have
player.
thought that's crazy. I would have thought you'd be more generous than me. But I actually think De Gea is one. Pogba is another. I think Aaron Wan-Bissaka is another. I think Rashford is getting there.
Yeah,
And
because when you actually think about these players, they've actually not won a league. So obviously that drive comes in when you surround quality with quality,
sure,
right? So
sure,
so when you see a player like Pogba coming in, he's already established on the global level. He's established his dominance by winning the World Cup. That's the best
yeah,
trophy that there is. So when you actually look at this young United side, obviously there'll be a lot of hunger. But is Rashford really there? I think he's reached that pinnacle this season, but it was so unfortunate that he got injured. I think he would have got way more goals than he could. But like, sorry to interrupt you there, but my only reason why I've only just named Pogba in this side is
hmm
because I think he has that winning mentality, and the major reason that he's frustrated at United is because we're not surrounding him with quality. And now that things are changing, I can finally see that with him as the leader in midfield, we could possibly push for a top three finish, and with who knows, possibly even for the title if you get in Sancho. If we sort out our right wing, then this will be a title
yeah.
contending side, in my
So
opinion.
then my question to you is, for next season, you only see Pogba sort of as a title, like, who you don't see like the other players as a potential title winning sort of player that can go a whole season and you can sort of rely on them to win you games.
Yeah, so when you look at consistency, I think that's the major element, and that's one of the major factors that is there in a title winning side. And have United been consistent? I don't think they've ever been consistent ever since Sir Alex left. You'll always see United almost. Have you ever gone 5 games? Have you ever won 5 games in a row? Have we ever gone ahead and once, have we ever had that feeling that we could win the title again? I think when we finished second in Mourinho's with Mourinho at helm, I think that was the closest we ever came to the title, and we were still so far off. So in terms of consistency with the squad, that's my only issue and my only worry. because
Yeah,
I see so much potential in this squad. When I see Rashford, I see he has such a high ceiling in terms of potential and where he can actually be. I think Maguire came a few days ahead and said that Rashford is such a great player and he could possibly be one of the best players at the club. And I completely agree with that. But we need to see more consistency. Have you ever seen Martial putting in performances week in, week out? No, we see Martial probably showing his best side only in a few games where he absolutely nails it. But there'll be games where he struggles with his movement or with
yeah,
his, with his with a lot of factors. So I think what United need to drill in is consistency, and that's where I think I appreciate Ole's approach with regards to him going for players who have captaincy potential. If you look at Bruno Fernandes, he was the captain at Sporting. If you look at Pogba, he's people say that he has a great authority in the dressing room with regards to how he reaches out to other players. If you look
yeah,
at Maguire, he has great. He's leading the side. So there are a lot of captainship material in the side. So I can finally say that yes, in terms of potential, and in terms of in terms of attitude, we can reach there.
yeah,
But I think there'll be a lot of players in terms of potential, and only Pogba I feel in this side can be the catalyst to get this side roaring. And even Bruno Fernandes, he's been such a great player, but it would be unfair to put the responsibility on him to just win the league for us instantly. I think Pogba should be the leader with this regard, because we all know the kind of player that he can be, and he just needs to sit down, not stop listening to his brothers, stop listening to his agent, and just put his head down and work for that title.
yeah. I agree. I think one thing I'd like to add is you bring up a great point. I think the teams that win the league are usually the most consistent because you can't really cheat a 38 game league, right? Like you have to be
Mm.
pretty consistent to win the league. Whereas in a cup competition, you can get lucky with the draw. You can win 4 or 5 games and then be crowned a champion of the FA Cup or the Carabao Cup or the Champions League, right? But ultimately, in a league campaign, usually the best team the team that wins the league is usually the most consistent. And like you said, we're very inconsistent ever since Sir Alex left, and we need to get back to that sort of mentality and drill it in players to if we can get our consistency up and start stringing matches like 5 wins in a row and then okay maybe lose one and then go on another 5 to 6 wins. That's a great start and a great way to sort of build the foundation for a potentially title winning season. I don't think we'll win it next year anyway, personally, as I think we're missing quite a bit.
Mm.
But I can see us, for example, finishing like top three, maybe, or battling out for second. Depends really how other clubs do and how where other managers go if they leave or whatnot. But I definitely agree on the whole consistency point you made.
Mm. And you talk about consistency. I'm just thinking of one player who sort of springs to mind this season when it comes to that word. Fred, who's just been incredibly consistent this season. You two didn't mention him there, I don't
Oh yeah.
think. Would you consider him part of a United side that could be extremely serious and potentially challenging for a title? Would you put Fred in that crop of players, Akash?
When I was speaking about Fred, like on my account, I think he's been one of the best players at United this season. He's actually turned the tide that was against him. Everyone in the from rival fans to probably the media had labeled him a failure already after just one season. And I think what he's done this season is improve his ability at controlling the ball, improve his passing in tight spaces, and we have actually seen how things have improved because he's on the pitch. He's probably been one of the most consistent players, and I'm so pleased for him that he's managed to turn things around for him now. But then again, does he start in a title contending team? The question, and does he give that much for a side to probably challenge for the title? I don't think so. I think he's a great option to have, but I can't see him starting in a title winning squad. And that's where I think that's why maybe United are still looking at probably a defensive midfielder this season, so we could probably offer the right balance. When we talk about Bruno Fernandes and a Pogba midfield, that's an awesome thing to hear when we're actually discussing it. But will it offer the right balance? I think that's where, does Fred offer that balance in midfield? I don't think he
Mm.
be that great in a defensive midfielder role. I think he's played in that position a few times for his previous club, Shakhtar, but I don't think he can do that, play
No.
that role at United. So when you actually look at probably a Zakaria or probably an Didi, I think those are the kind of players that would probably start in a title-winning squad. So I think he's personally had a very good season this year. I would name him my player of the season. A lot of people had said it would be Van Bissaka, but I just feel that he's played against all odds. I think when Van Bissaka came in, we were already anticipating the kind of things that he would do because we had already seen that kind of commitment that he had given at Crystal Palace. But when you look at Fred, he's risen against all odds and he's probably turned the tide that was against him. So I'd say that he deserves a lot of credit this season. And then again, where does he start next season if we get in a defensive midfielder? United have also been linked to Partey. I don't think that's happening. I think he's going to Arsenal. I think his links with Arsenal are genuine. I think the major reason why that could happen is because Atletico are interested apparently in Lacazette. So can they do a swap and probably get that transfer done? I think Arsenal won't be spending big, so they'll obviously be trying to trade players. So I think you could see players like Partey going there. So if United do look at a defensive midfielder, I would love if Ndidi comes to United. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the league. And I think if he does come at United, he would offer the right balance. And Fred could possibly start games, once every 2 games. Because when you talk about squad depth, I don't think a lot of people agree to that because they feel that if players come at United, they must start. If you look at City, they have such a strong bench. If half their bench players could start for majority of the first teams in the league. So it's important that we have squad depth as well. It doesn't hurt, and I think Fred should get his fair share of games and a lot of credit for his performances this season.
I think you're about right when you say that Fred wouldn't offer the balance for a Pogba and Fernandes midfield three who would fill up that third spot. I don't think Fred would give that, and I think out of the current crop, I think Nemanja Matic is the only one who can provide a really solid base that would allow that midfield to thrive with Pogba as a 6, Bruno as a bit of a roaming 8, and then Matic is at the base of that. So yeah, I completely agree with that. Ali, would you say the same? Fred is perhaps more accustomed to a squad player with a better base coming in for next season?
Yeah, I agree. I think Akash made some very good points along with you, Henry. So I definitely would agree and think that I'd be more comfortable with another holding midfielder outside of Fred. But Fred's a really good option to have as well. Yeah. I think, again, we shouldn't be complaining about potentially new players coming in and providing more competition because in the end, this is what makes sides great, is the ability to, have player A, player B, and player C, and if one goes, injured for an extended period, you can still rely on player B and C to step in and make an impact. So I think it's a good thing to have. I hope we do sign a holding midfielder, and then we have multiple options in midfield for us moving forward.
Yeah. Well, that wraps up everything, really. It's been a pleasure to have you both on. I've thoroughly enjoyed this discussion. Any last words from you lot? Anything you want to say to the listeners, Ali?
Yeah, I hope everyone stays safe and, follows the guidelines. And looking forward to hearing the feedback on what are people's thoughts from some of the things that Akash and I have said. It was really nice speaking with you.
Yeah, thanks, you too. And Akash, any last words?
When I was coming to this podcast, I was really looking forward to the discussion, and I think it's really lived up to it. I've had a great time coming on the podcast and speaking my thoughts on United and other things football. I just hope everyone stays safe and healthy, and it's been a great chat. And thank you guys for your contribution and time.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you both. It's been really fun, and I'm sure we'll get you on again at some point in the future when things change a bit. I'm sure there'll be a bit more to talk about then as well. Cheers, guys. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Cheers.